Over the past 3 years, we have participated in activities leading up to 148th anniversary of Oyasama, as encouraged by the Shinbashira through Instruction 4. In this, he stressed the importance of Oyasa's divine model by mentioning the phrase divine model up to 8 times. Recognize that merely knowing the divine model Oyasama is not enough. Instead, we should follow what Oyasama demonstrated in her life during this 3 years, 1,000 days period, leading up to 140th anniversary of Oyasama. Many years ago, when I was a college student in Japan, I was a member of the Students Association for Overseas Mission, SOTOM. During those years, most students involved with SOTOM started working for the Overseas Department of Church Headquarters after graduation. So as a member of this group, I felt it was essential to study the teachings to better serve the department's work. When I studied the life of Oyasama and Doctrine of Tenrikyo on my own, I often wondered what we truly meant by following the divine model of Oyasama. The descent into deep poverty left a strong impression on me. I felt that I might not be able to follow the divine model of Oyasama by immersing myself in poverty as she did. I would say I was very pure and serious about my faith at that time. Now, regarding the divine model Oyasama, read in the Doctrine of Tenrikyo, I quote, Oyasama not only revealed the teaching of God the Parent by her spoken word and by writing brush, but demonstrated them in her life. The life of Oyasama after she became the Shrine of God is indeed a divine model for all humankind to follow, unquote. As clearly stated, Oyasama's 50-year life exemplifies a divine model for all of us to follow. It is not only a model for those who have been seriously following Oyasama's divine model over the past 2 years, but also for those who are struggling or unsure how to follow it, even if they feel they should do so wholeheartedly. To understand what it means to follow Oyasama's divine model, it is helpful to have a clear picture of her 50-year life after she became the Shrine of Tsukihi. With this in mind, I'd like to briefly review her life during this period. After becoming a Shrine of God, Oyasama hastened to obey the command of God the Parent, fall to the depths of poverty. She began giving away her family possession to the needy. To save all people and uplift those living at the bottom of the valleys, Oyasama herself went down in those depths and paved the way for everyone's salvation in the world. While Oyasama descended for everyone's salvation while Oyasama descended into poverty, her husband Zenbei passed away for rebirth in 1853. That same year, Oyasama sent her youngest daughter Kokan to Osaka to spread the name of Tenryo no Mikoto. Even in difficult times, whenever Oyasama saw people in need, she never hesitated to share the little rice her family managed to gather. Oyasama always faced difficult situations with high spirits and encouraged her children, who, along with her, fell into the depths of poverty. When they had nothing to eat, she motivated them by teaching God's blessings that made daily life possible. The miracle of salvation began with the grant of safe childbirth in 1854. Since the jiva is where human beings first conceived, the path of universal salvation started with grant of safe childbirth. Oyasama then taught the root of illness lies in the mind, and all miracles healing right before people's eyes. As many miracles of healing were displayed, people began visiting the residence to ask Oyasama to save them from their illnesses and troubles. Meanwhile, some people came to the residence to commit acts of violence out of jealousy and envy. Despite these challenges, Oyasama remained even more spirited. In 1866, Oyasama began teaching the service. She dedicated herself to gathering service performers, cleansing their minds, uniting their hearts, and guiding them with spiritual growth necessary for the task. Although Oyasama faced hardships, including surveillance and imprisonment by the authorities, she remained steadfast in her work, hastening to complete the service while encouraging her followers to grow spiritually. Then, on January 26, 1887, by the lunar calendar, Oyasama withdrew from physical life, shortening her term of life to urge the spiritual growth of her children. Although this is very brief, I have outlined the divine model Oyasama. When I was young, I often wondered why Oyasama did not immediately begin performing miracles of salvation after becoming the shrine of God. At the shrine of God, she could have done so, but she chose not to. Instead, Oyasama began to plunge into the depths of poverty by giving away family's possessions to those in need. I now think that Oyasama first focused on laying the foundation for world salvation by teaching the mindset we should have to those around her. Then, Oyasama began proactively saving people from their illnesses and troubles after initiating the grant of safe childbirth, drawing people to the residence who would work for the path of salvation. In 1866, Oyasama began to teach the service. She then accelerated the completion of the service while urging spiritual growth of her children. Therefore, there is a clear progression in the divine model. I believe that Oyasama explained the teachings and demonstrated them step by step through her life in accordance with the spiritual growth of her children. I also believe that out of her parental love, Oyasama exemplified the teachings and left her divine model to save us all and guide us toward the true salvation or the joyous life. Referring back to my question about what it means to follow a divine model, I believe that the key is that Oyasama implemented the teachings in her daily life out of a profound love to show us how we could incorporate the teachings into our own lives. Another important point is that what Oyasama demonstrated in her time and place will still remain relevant across the different eras and locations. We should also keep in mind that the divine model Oyasama is meant to serve all people everywhere. That said, I do not think that following the divine model means copying exactly what she demonstrated. Instead, I believe it means to each of us to consider how Oyasama would see and how she responds to a situation, especially a challenging one, if she were right next to us, and then acts faithfully based on that understanding in our own life of faith. In his sermon following the spring gun service in 2003, the Shinbashira, in fact, instructed us, I quote, "Well over 100 years have passed since Oyasama demonstrated the divine model in a part of Japan that was known as Yamato province. Social situations have changed greatly since the time she was showing the model through her own example. In this day and age in which it is possible it is possible even to sprinkle the fragrance of the teachings on people in different countries. We might assume, if we are careless, that certain aspects of her divine model can no longer serve as exemplary models or be emulated. What is important for us is to not merely to look at the surface of the divine model, but to ponder every situation what she would do and how she would think if she were here now in our position, and to base our actions on that. Each and every aspect of the divine model can offer precious pointers for us. I feel sure that as we strive to draw closer to the mind of Oya-sama, the sort of attitudes and actions that accord with her intention will become second nature to us. Even though the time had changed, I think we are still able to follow the path of divine model simply by trying to live in a manner that embodies a mind of single-hearted salvation, unquote. So as I quoted, the Shinbashira instructed that we can follow the divine model in this time and place simply by trying to live in a manner that embodies a mind of single-hearted salvation. So we can see that Oya-sama, as a parent, solely intends to save her children out of profound love for us. As her children, who are given the training of wisdom, we should to draw closer to the mind of Oya-sama. While I reflect on the divine model, I had an unforgettable experience. So kindly permit me to share it, even though I'm not sure if it constitutes an appropriate example in this context. In 1998, I had opportunity to serve as a homeroom teacher for the Shuyoka English class. There were 10 students from diverse backgrounds and nationalities. Most of them were new to the faith, having returned to Jiba for the first time. Overall, the class went smoothly, although a minor conflict between two young students. We entered the third month, working on the final touches on our spiritual training. An incident occurred in the morning when students from each class gave their faith experience speeches. One of the two young students I have just mentioned committed an act of violence against the other student in the restroom, and another student who tried to stop him. This happened before the speeches started, while I was in the meeting. When I heard the commotion, I rushed to the scene. It appeared that he had been drinking all night, as he was completely intoxicated. I managed to persuade him to return his dormitory and rest. I hoped that he would apologize for the actions after sobering up and continue with the rest of the course. However, he later returned to the hall where the afternoon session was starting. To make matters worse, he was carrying a knife and began to chase some Japanese students who were later found to have spoken ill of him. Everyone in the hall panicked. We managed to stop him and immediately sent him back to his dormitory. As a result of this incident, the student was obliged to withdraw from the course. You can easily imagine how I felt at that time. I blamed myself for not noticing the scar in his mind that caused this incident. I also could not understand God's intention behind this note. At the end of this long day, I knelt before the Kanrodai to apologize to God the Parent for my inexperience as a homeroom teacher, and humbly asked for God's continued support and guidance for the student. Then I went to Oyasama's hall and asked her how I should encourage the rest of the students because I had a responsibility to soothe their minds and help them complete the course. I could not sleep that night about how I should explain the profound intention of God the Parent the next day. Nothing came to my mind except the Oyamato Shrine incident that took place in 1864. Please allow me to describe it. As a token of his gratitude for saving his wife, Izo Iburi thought of offering a shrine. In this regard, Oyasama told him that a shrine was not necessary, but he should start building something small. The construction began with the followers' efforts. The placing of beam was held on October 26 of that year. Those present celebrated the occasion with a simple meal. Later, Shushichi Yamanaka asked Oyasama for permission to invite everyone to his home the next day for another celebration. Oyasama readily granted permission. The next morning, Oyasama told Shushichi and others who were about to leave to pay their respect at the shrine as they passed by. Then they set out for the destination. On the way, they passed in front of the Oyamato Shrine At the instructed by Oyasama, they began to offer prayers with some musical instruments. That day, an important prayer was being conducted at the shrine, and they were detained because they disturbed the prayer. That this was a serious incident. Among recently joined the members of the faith, those who felt uneasy dropped out of the faith. One day, Kokan casually muttered to herself that they should not have gone. Oyasama suddenly assumed a grave look and said, I quote, "Do not complain. This will be the basis of the teaching in the future," unquote. So based on this particular incident, I believe Oyasama teaches us that there is a profound intention of God the Parent behind any event that seems tragic and unacceptable to us, and that we should view every incident as an opportunity for spiritual growth. Referencing the Oyamato Shrine incident, I encourage the students to complete the course, not only for themselves, but for the student who had to leave in the middle of the final month. This is my humble experience where I sincerely reflected on Oyasama's divine model to address the problem that I faced. Additionally, there are many times when I was inspired by Oyasama's words in the anecdotes of Oyasama. For example, I used to visit a person every day for about 3 years to administer Sasuke. Although he miraculously regained consciousness from a cerebral hemorrhage, he had been hospitalized due to a slow recovery. One day, on my way home from the hospital, the following words of Oyasama came to mind. Quote, "People tend to wish nothing but to be completely cured. But what is most important is to gain virtue that will lead to true salvation," unquote. These words of Oyasama echoed in my mind and prompted me to visit him again the next day to administer Sasuke. To follow the divine model of Oyasama, we need to dig up its roots. Specifically, we should study the life of Oyasama and anecdotes of Oyasama to gain a thorough understanding of her mind of single-hearted salvation. This is not as difficult as you might think if you study them consciously and attentively. For example, Oyasama speaks to us by fully putting herself in human shoes. When Izo Iburi visited the residence for the first time asking Oyasama to save his wife, who had been ill in bed since her delivery, Oyasama said, I quote, "Certainly I shall save her, but since this god by the name of Tenryo no Mikoto must be quite new to them, it might be hard for them to breathe," unquote. What Oyasama essentially said was that they found it hard to believe in God the Parent because they have never heard the name before. Since Oyasama was a shrine of Tsukihi, she could have commanded them to listen and believe anything she said. However, she gently told them that it might be difficult for them to believe in God by the name Tenryo no Mikoto. In other words, Oyasama showed empathy and understanding toward them. There are also stories in the anecdotes of Oyasama that illustrate empathy and understanding for people. For instance, when Chushichi Yamanaka faced major losses due to heavy rain in 1868, Oyasama said, I quote, "You may wonder why your fields and hills are washed out in spite of your faith. But you must accept the situation with the heart of gratitude. You must do so. That will come to good in the future," unquote. Similarly, Oyasama showed deep empathy toward Chushichi, lost his fields and hills due to heavy rain, rather than giving him one-sided directions. The attitude Oyasama illustrates how we should approach salvation efforts. We should first listen to others actively and then show empathy. This encourages them and leads to their spontaneous actions. As we have seen, the divine model of Oyasama guides us in daily life and salvation work. Our experiences and circumstances differ from person to person. Likewise, the length of our faith varies among individuals. Therefore, how we perceive and feel about the divine model may differ. It's important for each of us to strive to understand Oyasama's intention in every example she demonstrated and to apply it to our life of faith. We have about a month remaining before we observe the 140th anniversary of Oyasama. In these final days, let each of us deepen our connection with Oyasama and implement the teachings far more seriously. To conclude my sermon, I'd like to share the following divine direction from the Osashizu. I quote, "Speak of nothing difficult. I do not tell you to do anything difficult or to do something without model to follow. There is a path of the divine model for everything. It will not do that you cannot follow the path of divine model. If you do not follow the path of divine model, there is no need for a divine model," unquote. Thank you very much for your kind attention.